Well, I guess the music's playing,
Oh,
right?
I don't hear any music.
Well,
I thought there was supposed to be music put back in the intro.
no, it's supposed to, but New York puts it back in, so we're not going to put it back in.
Well, where's New York? Don't I get to hear it?
So no, the lady said that yeah, oh wow, she apologized actually, which like
Danielle said
oh,
the music's coming back, so I'm assuming we were talking under the intro right now.
All right, all right. I feel better then. I feel better.
What we're missing more, I think, is when Paul used to play the music for
right.
into the kind of
Yeah,
show.
well, no cows, no intro music. This is life in podcast land, people. It's tough out here.
See, podcast land is not easy.
We haven't had the maintenance guy in, and this stuff needs maintenance all the time. And so
yeah, all the time. And in fact, if I come and go and never come back, understand it won't be for lack of trying here, guys, because my maintenance guy, he ain't here.
yeah, right on, right on.
Yeah, I remember before the podcast, and podcasts were very popular, kind of today's radio, right? And
Yeah.
I would be asked, "Hey, do you guys have a podcast?" Paul, these are the days we're not really familiar,
Right,
Yeah, no, I
right.
don't. No, I don't. Yeah, and you go, "Why are people asking me if I have a podcast?" And then
Yeah.
it was always no. And I have to admit, after we got one, the first time someone asked me, "Did you have a podcast?" I got to say yes. I felt so
Yeah.
in.
Right.
Like, yes, I do. By the way, I do have one.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
And I have some new Air Jordans too.
Yeah, Joe Rogan has a podcast, right? Yeah, we're in his land now. Well, he's the Beatle guy of podcast, isn't he? I guess, or him and Carol.
Yeah.
Carolla, I saw him on the TV the other morning.
Listen, Adam Carolla was kind of, I think, a trailblazer in all this. He's had his podcast for I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
If Bill Medley can get on a podcast, anybody can have a podcast.
If who?
True.
Bill Medley, he's one of our older statesmen, and he had no Zoom problem whatsoever.
Oh, I thought you were saying if Bill Medley could get on a podcast, anybody could, meaning like he's hardly anything.
Technology. If an old cat like Bill can nail it, anybody can nail it.
Yeah. Bill had an assistant. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he had a teenager.
He had an assistant. That's okay.
I know. I was just trying to be nice.
Listen, before we get into too much, right? Should we tell them who's on today? Because we do have a guest. We love our guests. We have a lot of new ones coming. Tommy Roe.
What?
I know.
You know what? The things that we've found about Tommy, I don't think people really know it, I mean, I don't think people know what we know that we're going to ask Tommy about. We won't divulge that right now, but
just to get you in the ballpark real quick, dizzy, I'm so dizzy.
Yeah, but way before that, even.
I know.
Sheila gone,
yeah. And then, sweet pea, come on and dance with me.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
And one of the coolest, everybody.
Dude,
everybody. That's a great song.
Oh,
hey, I went online and I saw him doing that live, and right beside him, doing it with him, was Rick Levy. Rick was
Shut the door.
With him.
Rick was Tommy Roe's musical director for years.
Yeah, I know.
But hey, did you guys?
I called him Forrest Gump.
Were you guys able to? I went and saw a cover of Dizzy by a band called the Wonder Kids from like 80 something.
Okay.
And it was an 80s version of Dizzy. Then I saw a 2021 version of those guys who were kids in the 80s as older people now doing Dizzy.
Oh.
So like we've got Tommy, who's going to be 81 on May 9th, doing Dizzy.
Okay.
The Wonder Kids in the 80s doing it. And then the Wonder Kids who ain't kids anymore doing
funny.
it in 2021.
What a life.
We've been here a long time, guys.
What a life that sounds like.
That's crazy.
Well, we got voted at USA's best 100 songs of all time. It was number 91.
Who did?
Dizzy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good. One last thing and we'll get going. But one last Dizzy factoid. Dizzy has 11 key changes in it.
Oh, whoa, that is crazy.
Changes crazy, man. Yeah, like Donka Shane. All right, anyway.
That's pretty cool. Like Donka Shane.
Donka Shane keeps going up and up key change. Every time he gets back to it, he goes changes the key.
Oh my God.
And Wayne Newton was 14. people, we're going to get Wayne Newton. I don't know how it's going to happen. We're after him. We're going to get him. We got to talk to him.
Everything happens by magic.
This
So
is
just
Kyle
stay
Finley.
tuned.
Are your family?
Well, it's going to take magic for Wayne because he's getting on in years.
Well, geez, who are we? No kidding.
He's unrecognizable, really.
Well, who's getting any honor than anybody, frankly? I just said that there were kids in the 80s that are ancient looking. They look older than us right now, those Wonder Kids. Sorry, guys, but it's true.
Dude.
Look, we're all unrecognizable. Somebody came up to me the other day and said, "Were you Bob Cowsill?" You know.
That's a good.
Well, Vicki Peterson isn't unrecognizable. Sheila's in Brooklyn now.
Great. It would be great. If he's sensitive, hey, any artist, by the way, who we asked to come on, if you're sensitive about looks, and because we're a video, audio, you can do. Jay Osmond couldn't get his video going. We did the whole interview. He had a blank square. It was terrific.
Yeah, you can just fib and say you can't do a visual. It's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
Anyway, Tommy Roe coming up. All right. Let's get to things. We are heading for the Flower Power Cruise on Wednesday, people. In fact, by the time you hear this, we are home from the Flower Power Cruise. And it was probably the best one of all that we've been on.
Oh, we've already been on it. Oh, yeah, I've got the best tan. I didn't ever tan before. Now I'm tan.
Well, I'm going to pretend that, you know,
you do not look
I'm going to tell you something, you guys. These cruises are the best thing that ever came into the Cowsills' life. They're just like, you know, you go, man, I'd love to get out of the country. Well, man, be on a cruise. Just everything about the cruising and the food, man, it is the funnest.
But what they need to understand about us is this, though. Why? Look, you can talk to a lot of other artists and they'll tell you they hate the cruise.
You are right.
But for us, because we primarily are snow day people, and that can be a Sunday people too, as in the sun in the sky, because the bottom line is these cruises are just about hanging out and partying, our version for us. Yep. For us.
I know. They said 8 days out of the country. You know, they take very good care of you. You do a show and then a couple of days off our show, a couple of days off our show. And
come on,
say no to that, you know.
It is fun. And also the whole thing, you know, there's a lot of artists and we know a lot of them, and you know, they never leave their cabin, and for good reason. They might not like closed spaces or don't want to see the ocean with no land or stuff like that. But, you know, all the people on the cruise, look, they're as respectful of these artists as the artists would want them to be, but don't know because they're not down inside of it.
Our agent Bob is on the phone. Our agent Bob, we're in the middle of a podcast episode.
Hello, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Susan and Paul, say hi, Bob. Say hi, Bob.
Here I am, everybody.
Can you hear him?
Hey. Now, listen, everybody. Bob Burke has gotten a call to us. We think that he has gotten us Madison Square Garden, but we don't really know. But he would never call on our podcast unless it was something really, really big. Okay. See you on the cruise. Oh.
Our agent, Bob Burke, is going to be on the first half of the cruise. Okay. So any of
you he's been on it. We loved hanging out with Bob.
He was on the first half of the cruise.
Yeah.
You should have asked him what he thought of it.
Well, it's interesting too, because Bob Burke had to leave, you know, the Cowsills for we get to stay on the whole cruise. We just love that. Okay. But everybody else, they're getting off like after their shows and then they immediately get off. And Bob Burke, he was asking if he could stay the whole trip with us. And they said no. Only
So Bob was just calling to talk about that.
Yeah.
Oh, Paul's making up a scenario. Bob's asking us to interfere for him.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a cabin upgrade too, and get out of Carl's room.
Well, I didn't think
out Carl was on an inside cap.
Carl, you would get a balcony, right, guys? Because he's the Buckinghams.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, right on. So Bob gets to his first time out will be able to get the best room.
Yeah. Good for Bob Burke. He deserves it.
We hope it went well for him. Too bad we couldn't have told people beforehand to go get him and book us. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
But wait a minute. But in real life, we can.
Right, because he will be out on the cruise, so we can do it from the stage.
But this podcast is saying we've already been on the cruise.
If anybody wants the Cowsills, just get a hold of Bob Burke. We'll get a big picture of him and hold it up. You know, we don't know where he is. Where's Bob Burke? Like, where's Waldo?
Wait, we call him up and we kind of showing people. I say, hey, you got any business? You brought your business cards, right? And we bring them up.
That would be awesome. We're going to do something
crazy
funny like that.
Anyone want to see what an agent looks like?
Yeah.
Hey, we should bring him on stage.
That's
Maybe you want to play tambourine or something.
Yeah, we can.
We could.
Now you're having him perform. Hey, wait, whoa. Time out. Bob Burke, he started it with an a cappella group. He's a singer, a real singer.
Let's get him out with us, you guys. Let's get him up for a song.
Kind of fun idea, just for the hell of it.
Brilliant. I don't think
first half.
Listen, Peter Noon, the Buckinghams, you name the band, they have never asked their agent to come up on the stage and sing with them.
Yeah, we'd be doing it first.
We're doing it. It'll be great.
So you're hearing the planning session, because now you people who are listening who saw that happen, gee, I wonder how it went. This is a strange place to be in, where you have to project ahead.
Yeah.
So we're going to assume that goes well. We hope we pulled it off.
By now, Bob Burke has his own career, and he's with another agent. He quit Paradise, and he's an artist over on God knows what.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that is funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
Anyway,
I was going to say something. All right, so what else, guys?
Hey, it's interesting though. Sorry, just one more thing here. It's interesting because on Tommy's stuff, when he retired, he actually said that he'd be doing no more shows and no more interviews. So it's very nice that we have him, because he had stopped all of this.
Which is why we have to go back and ask all the other people who say that.
The latest factoid I read on him was that he and Chris Montez, the more you want me, the more I love Chris Montez. Okay, yeah. The more that he and Chris, who went back to the Beatles Day tour together, have a project, and that he is considering performing again.
Oh.
And he put out
awesome.
He put out like a 4-song EP. I think Freddie Weller helped him with that too. In 2019, that's just a COVID.
Hey, we should have. Is Freddie still on the planet?
We should get Freddie. Yeah, I know.
Why the hell would we not have Freddie on?
You can't think of everybody.
We forgot about him.
Indian Lake. My God, we could talk for a whole hour about Indian Lake.
Oh boy, we could share. Well, yeah, it'd be a lot of fun. Hey, how's it going for you? He'll go, well, I never did the war hoop part. It's going terrific. Thank you.
Oh my God. We could have the look.
I know.
We could even have it like a warning on the front of our podcast that says this podcast has blah, blah, blah topic matter. You might not want to watch it.
This podcast has sensitive material that might make some people feel unsafe.
Please advise.
What if we had like a Continental Drifter on?
I'd love it.
Something like that.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah,
God, we could have Holsapple. He used to be in our band for a minute.
Hey, we should have Peter on.
Sure.
Okay.
Get into the DBs and the Drifters, the DBs, and him.
Dude.
Cool.
He's a guy who
God, your brother.
Stops.
He'll be very excited,
and
guys.
That would be a huge show with all of his. It'd be a huge show because of Hootie.
REM.
Oh yeah, we got Hootie. REM. Yeah.
Hootie. Yeah. And listen,
how he landed those gigs, and then that will give other people out in the world, valuable information.
Huge story. Yeah. Cool. I'll talk to him.
I mean, this guy's like Kevin Bacon kind of distance to it's the end of the world as we know it. I feel fine.
Yeah, he's something else.
Yeah,
and
that's
listen,
cool. Good idea. Okay, we're having kind of a production meeting in front of the people, but we're coming up with good names. This is excellent work.
Well, I would like to throw another one in the ring.
Let's do it.
Dwight Allen Twilley.
Dude, I wanted Dwight Twilley.
We can do Dwight Twilley. I'm sure he'd be happy to come on.
People would love that.
Yeah, I would
love to find him.
I got questions for Dwight, because
I know right where he is.
And find out if he's candid about questions.
Yeah,
not everyone is. Not everyone is.
I will research this and get back to you, people.
The other thing that we could do is Biggie. We could have Biggie on this.
Biggie would be fun. Now that would be an interesting conversation.
Oh, I have a text out, an email out to Harry Shearer. He's a local guy here.
Oh yeah.
Spinal Tap, A Mighty Wind, and all the Simpsons.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's a huge, he's big fan. I know he'd come on, and that's a story. That cat's a trip.
Steve of the Nakeds, his brother. What was his name? The Family Guy guy?
Joe?
Dennis?
No. Anyway,
Yeah.
our brains are rolling now into guest land, guys. Holy mackerel!
Yeah, they really are in a
Oh,
production.
are we on?
Yeah, we're in the
Yes,
show.
we're on, goofball.
Okay, but this show actually is being played just before our April 15th appearance at the Capitol Theater in West Wheeling, West Virginia, with Lou Christie and the gangs that we're playing with.
Right, in striking.
And then the 16th, that Sunday, we're playing with the Governor's Daughter in Westerly, Rhode Island at the United Theater. So this is great. That'll be a fun weekend. And then after that, it's Happy Together time, guys. And that tour starts in May, on May 31st and ends in September, on September 3rd, 60 cities with more coming.
My head is spinning.
Yeah. Indeed.
My head is spinning.
My head is spinning.
That's enough of that.
My head is spinning.
Like a whirlpool, it never ends.
I did not mean to do that, but nice work.
Dizzy, my head has been dizzy. My head up the scale, he keeps going.
Hey, do we have any questions
You know
from
what I'm
our
gonna ask him?
wonderful audience?
A question from the audience? No, but
Yeah, do we have any?
No,
While you're looking for that, let me talk to the audience
I don't
because
have any
guys,
today.
if you guys have any if you have any ideas about who you would like to hear on our podcast,
Wow.
you could send those names to us. We'll give it our old college
info at Cowsills.com.
get them.
Please, before I forget, Bill Mooney in a heartbeat.
It was a great episode.
Bill can get us Angela, I think.
Angela Cartwright, he could totally, and that is a whole other ball of everything.
I think we're up to 85 episodes, and I think we've been around long enough to start getting connections to guests that we can implement. Like Bill can get us Angela.
Yeah, I'm remembering it now.
In the beginning, you're reluctant to ask. You just
maybe there's no harm in trying. Maybe we reach out to Adam Carolla and he'll come on our podcast.
If we could get to Adam Carolla and let him know we just need a little boost.
Yeah.
Who's Adam Carolla?
He's the number one podcast in the world.
Yeah.
For real?
Yes.
For real. He's an old stand-up comedian who had a TV show with Jimmy Fallon, I think, was his co-host, and they had the Man Show.
The Man Show was it.
It would not fly today. I'll put it that way.
But
anyway, but yes, he has millions and millions of downloads and listeners, and became a millionaire podcasting.
Yes.
Well, can we get him?
Oh, absolutely. It's just a phone call away, I'm sure.
Just a phone call away.
But Paul's right. I think he's a colleague in terms of historian and our age and our era.
We should get him on because he has the #1 podcast, and then we'll be #2.
Oh yeah, that could be.
That's what I'm talking about.
No, it would be
Flash
#2.
Phelps, my goodness.
It would be #2, yes, for that 30-minute interview. Absolutely. Now, how many can we hang on to? That's the goal, So
yeah.
Right.
All right.
That's it on the gigs. Paul, you got any puffer fish? Let's have some fun before Tommy gets here. Tommy,
okay. Let me get a few in.
Serious having meetings in front of people and stuff and thinking of guests.
Okay.
Hope to be back on my computer next episode, people.
I'm going to start. I got a couple of, kind of gross ones. Not really gross, but it's a little gross. And that is that, and it's kind of funny too. Lobsters pee out of their faces.
Okay. Let me see if I needed to have that in my head.
For real? For real? You're telling that right now? For real?
How do you know they're not spitting?
Yeah.
Well, this is why. Because even most interesting about it is that they do this as a way to attract mates. So this is a...
I thought you were going to say they do this in a way to repel enemies.
No.
Wow.
No, it's like the dolphins.
What an interesting twist that was.
Right?
Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about. Believe it or not, wombats poop is cubed. Think of that coming out.
What?
Yep.
They have square exit places?
They apparently do this in their digestive system. They handle it themselves. So they make it cubed.
Okay, wait a minute.
It's like Play-Doh Fun Factory.
Okay, fine with the bats, but we're not going to interact with bats. One more question about the lobsters.
Yes.
Now, so they pee out of their face. Now, are there any stories about people whatever, have the lobster on their plate, and for some reason, the lobster just before it got killed didn't go to the bathroom.
Well,
and is there any story of anyone getting in, cutting it open, and boom, out of the face?
Yeah,
it does happen.
Yeah, if you can just recall, if you've been at Johnny's Lobster House and people start with, digging into it, and all of a sudden stuff is squirting out of the claws and squirting out of everywhere. Well, they just secrete that way. It's just their thing.
He's embellishing, y'all.
No, I'm reading.
I don't do lobster.
Here's a good one. I'm going to put this out as a quiz. The closest state in the United States to Africa. So the closest United States to Africa is what state?
Texas.
No.
Louisiana?
No.
Florida.
It's Maine.
Maine?
Yes. Maine juts out further east into the Atlantic than most people realize.
But it's way north of Africa.
I know.
Wait, I got to get. Oh, wait.
Maine is the only state
that has
I must check this out immediately.
Check it out.
Maine is the only state that has a single syllable name as well. It's really interesting.
Wow, who knew that?
Oh, okay.
Is that right, Bob?
Yeah, I know what you and I did.
Point it and bring it up to the screen, please.
I'm gonna show you. Okay, you and I, all right,
are thinking south.
You and I are thinking South America. There's the United States and there's South America. So Florida, Texas, Louisiana, but Africa is over there.
It's straight across.
There's Maine. There's Africa. Maine.
Okay. So you see, Susan, these aren't
Florida,
not making this up.
No, well, you didn't make that up. That's for sure, Puffer.
Hey, you know what? We all have unique fingerprints, but we also all have unique tongue prints. No tongue print is the same, just like in the fingerprints. That
is very interesting.
Yes. I'm trying to withhold a witty remark, so I've successfully done it. We can move on.
Okay. And I know you guys know it, but I want to let everybody out there in the world know it, that, when you see a striped tiger, in the zoo or at live, that is not the color of their fur. That is the color of their skin. All those stripes are on their skin.
I knew that because you told us earlier.
Did you know that?
Because you told me earlier.
Tigers have see-through fur. Tigers have see-through fur. Then that must be white.
Crazy, right?
It is.
Yep.
Tommy Roe is here. His name appeared in
Tommy.
What a handsome guy.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Tommy.
Hi, Tommy.
Hi, Susan. Hi, Paul.
Hi, honey.
Bob.
How are you?
Have we ever been enjoying your career in what you do? You go down the little rabbit hole of Tommy Roe land. And it's so good. Paul's going to act up because of he's in Oregon. Susan's on her phone, compromised from her computer, and you'll see too.
Paul is in Oregon.
Yep.
Yes,
I'm in New Orleans.
New Orleans,
California.
Oh my goodness!
And where
technology,
are you?
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
It allows this. It allows this. I mean, you have been on our radar since we were kids. Clearly.
Well, we grew up together. What can I say?
We did.
Sure did.
And before we get started, I've just got to say, Tommy, that I want to thank you, because when I hear Sheila and I hear Sweet Pea, I'm smelling the ocean at the beach that we went to. I'm smelling the concession stand, and I'm feeling that terrible shower you take at the beach to go home. And that's what those songs conjure. And I'm tasting the concession stand. It's crazy, but it's true. So thank you.
That's a wonderful image.
Okay, then let me quickly, before Susan gets underway, share my Tommy Roe-ness. I had a cover band for 28 years, and I'm sure I sang Everybody as many times as you did, if not more times, because these are 4-hour gigs 4 times a week sometimes. And
you have to stretch it.
This song is there. Everybody is every night. We are doing every night. So cool.
Great. Are you guys quite done?
No, I want to tell them how great it was to be able to sing Everybody, because cloned the recording. So the phrasing, everything on everybody was what you did. And it was awesome to sing that song.
Well, thank you so much. That's so cool.
All right, Susan, take us down the road.
Okay. First of all, I always like to say hello and welcome to the Cowsills podcast to Tommy Roe. Crowd goes wild. How are you, sir? And thank you so much for joining us. And I didn't hear, where are you coming to us from right now?
I'm in Atlanta.
Oh, so you're home.
Yeah, I'm home. It's kind of a dreary day today. It's raining and it's very cloudy. And, I'd rather see the sunshine. I'm a sunshine kind of guy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm knowing it now. Well, so listen, I like to start us off.
Yeah.
No, see, here's why, Tommy. I start us off because I can't, I have to say what I have to say and get out of town. So,
okay.
No, I mean, just because they're my brothers.
Oh, and we interrupt her.
That.
Well, that's a family tradition. That happens in all families.
So I know you're born and raised in Atlanta. It's 1942. Now, we all know how that you became Tommy Roe, the musical entity that Paul had a bad shower behind. That is lovely. Yeah, brother. Okay, nice. Wearing it proud. So let me ask you, when you were born and raised, first of all, were your folks musical at all? And if they were or were not, what were some of the first things you wanted to be when you grew up beside a rock star?
Well, my family was musical. My father played guitar. My mom played piano in church.
Okay.
It's like the story of Southerners who get into the music business. It seems to all stem from the church. And so I picked up the guitar from my dad. He taught me 3 chords, and I started writing songs. And, one thing led to another. I was about 13 or 14 years old. So I started very young.
Okay. Well, and so when I'm doing my research, I'm seeing that, like, you, unlike many other musicians that we know and love, actually had a day job, a career to pay your rent. Was that a part of the family, guidance program? Or were you able to did you stay musical while keeping your day job?
Well, I put a band together while I was in high school. So,
cool.
After I got out of high school, my first job was at Rich's department store here in Atlanta. I used to push the little rack around with the clothes on it, from one section to the other. And then the next job I had was at General Electric. And that's when my musical career kind of kicked off while I was working there. So I only had 2 real jobs in my life. Rich's department store and General Electric. And then the rest of it has been a hobby job.
Got that. And were your folks, obviously, if they were musical, they were pretty supportive of your musical career, yeah?
Oh, my family, of course. Yeah. Well,
nice.
Especially my dad. And mom was a little reluctant. She wasn't too sure about the business, and the pitfalls of the business. She had questions about it. But dad was gung-ho. He said, go for it. You're only 19 years old, so go for it.
Sweet. And what was the name of your first band?
The Satins. Tommy Roe and the Satins.
Nice.
We wore these satin. Wore these satin shirts, or at least as satin as we could find cheap. It looked like satin anyway.
Okay, Tommy, and I have to say, Tommy, to butt in. It's not butting in, but our sign is usually raise our hand, but Susan can't see us because she's on her phone. So
go ahead. I'm done. Thank you, Tommy. See you.
Okay.
Oh, well, that was short and sweet.
No, I'm not really leaving.
No, she's not going. She just gets it going. That's all. So listen, we know our big influence, our big deal was the Beatles, but we're pretty sure yours was Buddy Holly. In terms of you're 13, 14, you said, I started my first band. Well, what were you listening to, and what's this band going to play, and to get you going down this road?
Great question.
We were strictly a cover band. I mean, I was a huge fan of Holly, and who wasn't back then?
Yeah.
And so we did all of Holly's stuff in our show. We mainly played wherever they'd let us play. Tell you the truth about it, we opened record stores. We'd sit up out on the sidewalk on the street and play. You name it. If they asked us to play, that was a privilege, so we did it. But our gigs were mostly at fraternity parties, like University of Georgia and Georgia Tech. And so we did all cover songs. We did a lot of Holly stuff, all of the rockabilly stuff. I was kind of a rockabilly artist in the beginning. And we did a lot of blues stuff too. I mean, if you can imagine me singing Jimmy Reed and John Lee Hooker, I mean, if you can imagine that, that's what I used to try to do.
Right there, I got to stop you because when we were kids, we did Jimmy Reed. We did Bright Lights, Big City, Big Boss Man. You got me easy. What were you doing? How'd you get? You go from Buddy Holly. How'd you find Jimmy Reed?
Well, the fraternity parties love to dance to those songs. So we had to stick them in our repertoire for those fraternity parties. They loved the blues, John Lee Hooker and Jimmy Reed, all Bobby Blue Bland, all that stuff. And we would try to do it. We did it with originally my band, we didn't have a bass player. It was only drums and 2 guitars. So we were pretty thin sounding.
And it was too early, I guess, in your career to be doing Wooly Bully.
Yeah, it was a little before Wooly Bully. Yeah, but it was fun, and that was and really where I got my break was playing locally here in Atlanta. I was asked to do a gig for Paul Drew, who was a big DJ here in town on WGST, and on Saturday nights he would do these sock hops, and he would always have a band. So he invited our band to play it one Saturday night at his sock hop. And Paul brought a friend of his along to the gig named Felton Jarvis. And that's when I met Felton. And Felton was wanting to be a record producer. And so he talked to me about producing records with me. And that's how it all started. We were pretty popular around the Southeast from 59, 60, and then 61. And then so we put the deal together in 61. And then in 62, we went up to Nashville and recorded Sheila, was the first hit.
And that's with the Satins, right? The Satins.
We didn't. That was kind of a problem we had. Felton wanted to produce me, but he didn't want the band to be involved.
Oh boy, that old.
So you've heard that story before, right?
A few times in my life in LA.
Buddy Holly had his Crickets and Tommy Roe had his Satins. So
now, when you're playing with them, was it Tommy Roe and the Satins or just the Satins?
Tommy Roe and the Satins.
Well, there you go. Okay, so right off the top, you're the focus. You're the lead singer. So when you moved on and now you got Sheila without the Satins, were these friends of yours? I mean, did everything turn out okay with you and the Satins after you made it?
Well, in the beginning, it was kind of a rough spot. I mean, they were, they didn't appreciate it at all.
Okay.
And our bass player, Drole Bush, he's a good friend of mine to this day. And every time he sees me, he says, boy, I never will forget the Satins and Tommy Roe and the Satins. What happened to them?
Oh, man. He
loves to bring it up.
Yeah, you had like four Pete Bests.
Yeah, everything worked out in the long run.
Okay.
And in fact, I brought, when I started recording in Muscle Shoals with Rick Hall, I brought my guitarist. Bobby West was the guitarist of the Satins. And I always called him the best rock and roll guitar player in the world. And he's the one that plays the lead on Carol, the cover I did on Chuck Berry's Carol.
Oh, wow.
He was the original Satin guitar player. Oh, so I brought them into my career as studio musicians as I went along.
Okay, helping them out, kind of, for sure.
So where did the Phillips label come in, right?
Yeah, that was the first recording. I recorded Sheila with the Satins while I was still in high school.
Oh.
And so that was Judd Phillips. That was Sam Phillips' brother. He started a label out of Memphis called Judd Records.
Okay.
And Judd released the original version of Sheila. And it did quite well in the Southeast, but it never was a major hit.
So not many people in this world can say that the Beatles opened up for them. I mean, a lot of people, I noticed over the years played with the Beatles, but they didn't open up for too many. And Tommy, they opened up for you. Okay, so I need to know how you felt about that. And then in the same breath, I wanted to know, you're doing incredible in the 60s, the early 60s, it's rocking. And then the British invasion comes, right? And you still rock it. I mean, you still stay right at the top of your game. But how were you inside your body when all that was happening? And did you ever get later on in life, did you ever sense and think back, God, the Beatles opened up for me? I mean, hello. So
great questions, Polly.
Sorry.
Well, that was, of course, an incredible part of my career. I mean, being on the ground floor of a supergroup is always exciting. Being caught up in the mayhem of a supergroup is not too exciting. that can be very detrimental.
Who were you?
The tour was, I always our tour, Chris Montez and I were the headliners of the tour in England. And our tour was really the springboard for the Beatles, because after that tour, they never opened for anybody else. I mean, that was it.
For real.
And then when they came to the States and did the Ed Sullivan Show, they invited me to open for them in their first American concert in Washington, D.C., which I did.
Good.
And that was in 1960. Our tour in England was in 63, and the Washington, D.C. concert was in 1964, in February of 1964. And then shortly after that, I went into the Army, and so the whole year of 1964, I was kind of out of the loop. But while I was in the Army, that's when Beatlemania started. And so I was in my foxhole in Fort Sam, Houston, Texas, thinking, what the hell am I going to do when I get out of here to compete with all this great music coming from England? So that's when I came up with the idea of Sweet Pea, and I wrote Sweet Pea while I was in the Army. And I called it soft rock. I know that was before soft rock of the 70s, but my whole idea was to do something so different that I didn't want to compete with them on the same level as their sound. I just wanted to be totally different. And that's how Sweet Pea happened.
Wow.
And so that's what started the whole bubblegum soft rock thing for me in 1966.
Do you kind of consider yourself the grandpappy of that? A little bit?
Well, that's what they call me. The DJs used to call me the king of bubblegum. And
right on.
You know, what's interesting about that, Tommy James released Hanky Panky before Sweet Pea. It was out, a few months before Sweet Pea, and it did nothing. So we were both onto the same kind of groove, the
vibe,
bubblegum sound at that time. And then Sweet Pea came out, and Sweet Pea, it's an interesting story about how that became a hit. Sweet Pea was a big, got a lot of play in Florida during spring break. And at the Daytona station, it was #1 there in Daytona. And all the spring breakers were down there during that time. Well, when they went back home, the radio stations weren't playing the record. So they started requesting it. Wow. Because they had it, they loved it in spring break. They were having a good time dancing to Sweet Pea. So that's how that record broke. It kind of was a slow breaker, but eventually it caught on all over the country, just springing out of Daytona Beach, Florida.
Okay, so look, this is all new. No one knows who the Beatles are. No one knows what's coming. Okay, so now here you guys have booked, the Beatles, a good local band. You were all going to have a great time. Now, I want to hear about arriving. I want to hear about the day where, did you know in advance, or did you walk out or watch them walk out because they're opening the places? I'm sure the chaos that we're all going to get used to is happening. And then they end their set. You start your set. Did the crowd calm down? Did the crowd? I want to know about that show. I want to know about that crowd, because this was brand new experience for you and Chris. So what was that like? Do you remember?
Well, yeah, of course I remember. It wasn't very nice, really, because you couldn't follow them. I mean, they created such chaos in the audience, and the Teddies were following them around from gig to gig, from venue to venue. Their fan base that they were very rapidly developing at that period. And so, when they finished their show, they wouldn't pipe down. They wouldn't settle down in the audience. They were kind of, rowdy crowds. So we had to jiggle the show around to make it work. I ended up closing the first half, and I think I'm not sure exactly how it worked, but I think Chris ended up opening the second half, and the Beatles ended up closing the show. And then, of course, Chris and the Beatles would switch back and forth, closing and opening. Like when the Beatles played Liverpool, the Beatles closed the show in Liverpool because it was their hometown. Okay. So basically, the whole thing, if you remember Hard Day's Night, that's exactly how our tour was. I mean, I think that movie was all based around our tour, because when the show was over, you couldn't leave the theater because of the crowds outside. They would actually chase you down the street like in the movie. So it was pretty crazy.
Set aside how, as an artist, this is irritating, but it's so new. Now, by the time you're done with the insanity of what you had to be put through, did you have a sense of the crowd? For sure you had a sense of this, but did you have a sense musically? Could you hear them good enough and hear these songs while you're on the side of the stage or whatever you're dealing with to realize that, oh my God, this is something real special?
Yeah, I could tell. I was selling, in fact, I tell the story a lot. Brian Epstein was talking to my manager about representing me in Europe, in England and Europe. So they were trying to put a deal together. They didn't have a clue what was in store for them. I mean, Brian was looking for other artists to manage and stuff.
Wow.
And so when they did their first concert in the States, Brian got in touch with my manager to get me to open the show for them, which we did. But he also asked me to help see if I could get my label to sign them to a record deal. And so Brian, after our tour in England, Brian gave me a little promo pack. Actually, it's just a NIMS record store bag with a bio in it and an album and a single. And he asked me if I would see if my record label would sign them. So I'd hyped Felton on it. Back and forth, I was telling, it's like Elvis all over again. It's just chaotic as hell. And they're going to be big stars. So he lined up, as soon as I arrived in New York, I took the ship, the Queen Elizabeth, back from England to New York. And Felton met me at the docks and took me right to the president's office at ABC Paramount Records.
Wow.
And we walk in, I'm all excited. I got my little NIMS records bag.
Yeah.
And they're congratulating me on the tour. I understand it was a great tour, a lot of good PR and very successful. And Felton tells us that you have an act that you would like for us to consider signing to our label. And I said, yes, I do. And I started selling them, they're called the Beatles. And, they're just fantastic. And so the president said, okay, well, let me see what you got. I gave him the album and he put it on the turntable. And I think he either Please Please Me or Love Me Do was the first cut. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
He dropped the needle on the album, played a few bars, picked it up and said, I tell you what, kid, let us be the talent scouts. That's got to be the worst piece of crap I've ever heard in my life.
Wow.
And so Felton and I, just the air was let out of our balloon. I mean, I just knew they were going to love them, right? But I'll tell you the secret, what happened with the Beatles. You had to see them. If you didn't see them, you just heard their music compared to what was going on at that time in America. It wasn't that outstanding. I mean, Love Me Do and Please Please Me. Now you look on it and say, boy, those are fabulous.
Right.
But until they were seen on the Ed Sullivan Show, in fact, they had records released in America on VJ Records. They didn't do anything.
Okay.
So
Okay.
after the public saw them, that was the key. Once they saw them, that's what made it happen.
Not to make it a Beatles podcast, this will be my last Beatle question. I swear.
Yes, Bob.
Really. Listen, we lugged Super Beatle Vox amps around too, Tommy. We know what that's like. But listen, during the course of that tour, last question. Were the boys eventually, were they interactive? Were they friendly? Did they stay to themselves? Did you all get to know each other? How did that?
Oh, yeah. We traveled on a bus together for almost a month, so we got to know each other John was my pub buddy. He introduced me to Guinness, which I'd never heard of coming from the South. I didn't know what Guinness was.
Were they empathetic to your plight as the closing act? Were they empathetic to what you were going through?
Oh, yeah. In fact, when they shifted the thing around, John said, no, we don't want to do that. So, they're the ones that have the hits. They should close the show. I mean, they were very humble, very humble. Cool. They just didn't realize what was happening. I mean, it happened so fast for them. And they were very humble about the whole thing. It was incredible.
You should know that while you were in that foxhole and you were away and they were taking everything over by storm over here, and you said, you heard their music, said, well, I won't go for that. I'll go for this. Believe me, all of us who were here operating in the middle of all that, we all said the same thing. Oh, they're number one. All right, everybody, we're going for number two. Everyone knew. But
here's the thing. Sweet Pea came through.
Oh, yeah.
That was before.
Oh, yeah.
But that was before. Look, your genre, I mean, I'm going to call it yours now. We wouldn't be here without it.
It's fun music, that's what made it so different and so acceptable, especially by the DJs. I don't know if you remember during that time, the DJs were very reluctant to play certain records because of the lyrics in the records. They had standards back then that we don't have today. I mean, you can play anything today on the radio. But in those days, they were very careful about what they played. Well, Sweet Pea was family friendly. I mean, I had no problem. Once they heard it, they said, sure, we'll play that. That's a fun record, So that's really what opened the door for me, Sweet Pea. And then Hooray for Hazel came after that. And then, of course, the big one, Dizzy, that was the big one, that's followed that. And
yes.
So it created a genre for me that really managed for me to overcome Beatlemania and the British invasion. The British invasion just put a lot of the Americans' acts off the charts. And to survive and stay on the Billboard charts, you had to be different.
Yeah. It's funny.
Tommy.
We feel a lot in common with you about that because we were unoffensive too. We were inoffensive, when we came out, a breath of fresh air. And you learned you had to coexist with the Beatles and what the insanity that we were all in the middle of. And acts like yours and ours are just trying to hold our own. And
but that's really what made it such an exciting decade because as you guys know, back then, you could hear everything on the same radio station.
Yes, that's right.
Music wasn't splintered back then like it is today. And, you'd hear rock and roll, you'd hear blues, you'd hear R&B, you'd hear bubblegum, you'd hear it all on the same station, folk music, everything. And they were all on the charts together, the Billboard charts.
By the way, I never personally viewed Tommy Roe as bubblegum. I was more Yummy Yummy and Ohio Express 1910. I was more that as a good definition of bubblegum music. But Tommy Roe and even the Cowsills, I don't believe us. We dipped into it with Indian Lake. We got to talk about Freddie Weller. I forgot. I'm sorry. I got distracted because I said Indian Lake and I thought of Freddie Weller. And you know Freddie.
Oh, sure. Well, Freddie and I wrote some great songs together. And Freddie and I kind of were in the business together here in Atlanta when we were in high school. So we knew each other for a long time. And when Dick Clark invited me out to be a regular on Where the Action Is, and I met Paul Revere and the Raiders. They were a regular on the show. Paul came to me one day and said, I lost my guitar player. Do you know anybody that'd like to audition for the gig? And I suggested he get in touch with Freddie. Wow. And that's how Freddie got hired to be a Raider. He came out and auditioned and got the gig with Paul's group. And so when he moved to California, I was already there, and we started doing tours together with the Raiders and myself. And Freddie and I started writing songs on the bus as we'd drive from gig to gig. And Dizzy was the first one we wrote.
Wow.
That's a good one out of the block.
Then we wrote Jam Up and Jelly Tight, and then I wrote several country hits that Freddie had. I wrote with Freddie during his country career.
Well, we got to perform with Freddie one time, and Freddie in 1972 had a country hit, Indian Lake, which was a pop hit for us in 1960. Right. And in that show, we got to go up and sing harmony with him on his version of Indian Lake. And that was a real fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Very unique.
I'm glad to hear that you're not completely done, because the people now, remember all the divisions. There was acid rock, there was heavy metal, there was this, you were this, if you're not this, then you're not cool, and all that. And I think you probably have learned this over time, and we have learned this, that all these people now that are all our age and older and a little younger, those divisions are gone. I mean, the person who loved Jimi Hendrix is going to love to hear Rain the Park and Other Things, or Dizzy, or Sweet Pea. Those titles have all gone away, and we're all just loving the music. So I'm glad you're still doing it, because, man, you were incredible.
Well, I wrote a lot of songs that were not bubblegum. And the interesting thing is the record company, after Sweet Pea was a hit, the record label wouldn't let me record certain songs that I wrote. Like, for instance, there's one song I wrote called You Might As Well Forget Him, which was a big reggae hit by a bunch of reggae artists.
Wow.
And so, they wouldn't let me record stuff like that. They wanted me to stay in that same genre, to have one hit after another.
Yeah.
So I was kind of pigeonholed in that respect. But, I have a brand new CD out is called From Here to Here. And you can order it on solarmusic.com. And we just finished it up about a month ago, and it's just out. First CD I've had since the 90s.
Tommy, that is very exciting news.
And it's got songs on it that, I've re-recorded some of my songs from the 60s, like Heather Honey, I re-recorded. Kick Me Charlie, I re-recorded. They were released in the 60s, but I've revamped them. And I've also done some new songs I've written, which is totally non-bubblegum. So it's the whole time. The whole point of the album is from here to here. It's kind of showing you how I went from one thing to what I'm doing today. I still love writing songs, and I still love working in the studio. So
awesome.
And is this project with Chris Montez?
No, it's Mike Franklin down in Orlando, Florida, produced the album for me. And he produced and arranged the album, and he has Solar Music, solarmusic.com. That's where you can find it.
And
so this is hot off the presses. I didn't see any of this in my research of you.
Yeah, this is brand new. We're just starting to promote it now. We're also going to release a vinyl version of the record as well. We're in the process of putting that together now.
It happens sometimes in the world, but I think that your voice, even in this older world for you, almost sounds better than the original Tommy Roe.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you a little secret to some of those original records. When I recorded Sheila, I don't know if you ever ran into this or not, but the engineers would do what they call wrap the capstan on the tape machine, which meant it sped the tape up.
VSO.
The VSO.
Well, Sheila was sped up. So that's why all of those records, I sound like I'm way up here,
Oh my God.
Yeah, the thing is that Sheila became such a big hit. They did it on all the records after that. So, one bad thing about the record business back then is once you had a hit, they wanted you to follow up with something that sounded just like it.
Yep.
Yes.
And you didn't have a lot of, as an artist, you didn't have a lot of input into what you were doing. The record labels really told you what they wanted you to do.
Oh, we know.
Imagine the bands out there, Tommy, that were, listening to that song and then trying to play it.
Of course, it was always a half step higher on the record, so they were trying to get the chord, the key, and they could never figure out what the key was.
Well, that's funny. It bends it away from the normal. That's right. But you know what, Tommy? Shame on the record companies in this respect, because any of those record companies who want to keep you in this vein and control you, I don't know why they're not listening to everybody and listening to that Tommy Roe, because that's the same Tommy Roe as the sleepy Tommy Roe. And
at the same time. Yeah.
That's too bad they had that kind of power.
After everybody was a hit, they wanted me to get away from that style.
Oh,
it's crazy, but I mean, and you can't really argue with the success because everything they asked me to do became very successful.
Yeah, that's true.
We tried to abort the release of Indian Lake, which was going to go to #1. Okay, like we didn't know what we were talking about. Crazy. And these people did, but we think a part of what they knew was, this is a hit because we're going to make it one. And
that's true. They had the power to make hits. Totally different than today.
Totally different. Can't even compare it.
And it's kind of funny, you guys, because back then it was like, they could make it a hit, and it was kind of it wasn't looked upon very nicely. And now it's like, man, I wish we could go back to that. Just saying.
Yeah. I hear you.
Okay, so quick question. A while ago, it was a number of years ago, we played with you in Las Vegas, and your band was Good Rockabilly with Rick Levy was in it. And you did a rockabilly show, and I just stood there and go, this is so cool. What about performing? Right. You can perform these songs, right?
Well, the last concert I did was in 2017, and it was here in Atlanta in Marietta at the Coliseum. And it was with Rick's band, and of course, and we had a great show. But right after that, shortly after that, I had quadruple bypass heart surgery.
Oh my! Wow.
So in 2018, I had the surgery in the first part of in August of 2018, and so I just didn't want to do any concerts after that. I was just not mentally ready to do it.
Right.
Understood.
So I was getting to where I was ready to do some more concerts, and then in 2020, my wife passed away.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm sorry to hear that, Tommy.
Yeah, so I had this past 4 or 5 years have just been really a weird time for me.
Yeah.
But this year, I'm starting to I already have a gig booked in June in New Jersey. And I have one in Nashville in May.
Well, there
so
you
I'm
go.
already getting back into doing gigs, and I'll start doing it again this year gradually. I'll be doing it with Mike Franklin's band out of Florida.
Okay.
Come on out onto the Happy Together tour.
Susan, I was thinking this. Can you imagine Tommy Roe songs on the Happy? We do this tour every summer. We're doing our 81. Other groups from the 60s, but you're set. It's rigorous. We got little Anthony going. He's 81 this summer.
Yeah. I'm not touring. I don't want to tour, but I'll do spot dates. Like I'm doing, I'll do 1 or 2 dates in a row.
Okay.
I'm aiming for that, Tommy.
Yeah.
Pray for me.
And I think, I can handle that gracefully and not really push myself. And, I'll be 81 years old May 9th. So
you look great.
you look amazing, but you always have.
So, I feel great. And I'm getting a lot of the things that have happened to me in the past few years behind me. Good. And the hard thing was losing my wife. I mean, we were married 42 years. And that was a hard thing. So,
of course it was.
I have a record out that, it's funny when tragedy comes to our families, we never know how we're going to react. And when my wife passed away on December 4th in 2020, that was a chaotic day for me. And I finally got to sleep that evening. And the next morning I woke up and wrote a song about her called My Little Josette. Her name was Josette. And I wrote a song called My Little Josette. And I must have dreamed it, because when I woke up, it happened like in 30 minutes. I wrote the song. It was done. Yeah. And it's out now on all the streaming platforms.
Yeah, that's out. And you can see that on his website, that record. But that's a song that's sitting there, and you open the door, it just fell in. And songwriters know what that feeling is like.
That's a songwriter thing. You never know where it's coming from. I mean, it's really a gift to be able to do that.
It is.
Yes, it is.
And it's something that I feel like I'm just the channel,
Yes, of course.
Same here.
And it's an incredible thing to be able to do that. It's a really, I consider it a gift.
I agree.
Well, Tommy,
and go ahead, Rob.
No, go ahead, Susan, because I'm going to start.
I was just going to say that I think it is an amazing. I agree that it is a gift, and that at our age, we still have that running through our bodies and spirits. And boy, not everybody can say that.
It's something you can do to the end, It's
pretty
great.
Want
to be Tony Bennett.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example.
Just some quick Tommy factoids. He's in 3 Hall of Fames: Rockabilly, Georgia, and Iowa. No Hall of Fames. Yes, he is. And Dizzy. I'm so glad. I would have almost emailed you. Dizzy. Now, it's said that and known that Dizzy has 11 key changes.
What's that about?
It's like Donkashane. Okay, listen. So my question, do they all go up?
No, it sometimes it goes back.
See, isn't that brilliant?
I remember that from being a kid.
Yeah. I always thought, Susan, as a kid, you did not think there were 11 keys.
It was weird. It kept going like this, and you'd go, what?
You know what?
What?
Most key changes that I really love are the ones you don't know it happened. Okay.
Exactly.
Those are the good ones. The ones that are obvious are, God, a key change. I did not know there were 11.
Well, I think that's why Dizzy was such a big hit at roller rinks.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it was such a smooth transition, and the kids could skate to it really easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting. I used to do, I would get booked at roller rinks because the song was so huge at roller rinks, and they would book me. I would go in, we'd have 300 or 400 people in a roller rink.
Holy cow.
Because in the roller rink, it's not 11 key changes. They're 11 elevations. You know what I mean? It goes up and up and up.
When Freddie and I were on the bus writing that song, I said, I had the idea for the song. I had the title and I had a little bit of it written. But I said, Freddie, I always do a modulation in my recordings. I've been very successful doing that. It seems to add some energy to the song. And I said, we got to do it in this song, Dizzy. And he said, well, he thought a minute, and Freddie's kind of a laid back guy. And I saw him thinking, and he said, well, why don't we do it in the first bar? I said, first bar, what do you mean? And he started playing D, G, B. And that's the first bar of the song. You go from D to B, which puts you in the key of E. That's your first modulation.
I got it going in my head. I'm following him.
I have to interrupt here, please. May I have this? Okay. So while I was deep diving you, I saw this wonderful band that did a cover of Dizzy in the 80s called the Wonder Kids.
Oh, yeah. The Wonder Stuff.
Do you know about that?
Oh, yeah. Vic Reeves and the Wonder Stuff.
Yes,
he went to number one. It was number one in England.
Holy cow. I had no idea. But then, and I thought that was a really great version.
It is a great version.
It's badass. And then I went and Googled further and saw 2001. They did it. They performed it somewhere. It was wonderful. I just think what I was thinking was, how cool is this? So we come from our era and we're all hip to each other. Then these kids come up and they were kids. Yeah. And it's all this time past. Yeah. You're still here with a brand new record. Those kids just made a video a few years ago. And I'm going to tell you right now, campers, they ain't kids anymore. And I just was looking at it going, what in the, I mean, how blessed are all of us to functionally being here in 2023 with these careers.
Yeah.
Also with Dizzy, number 91 in the top 100 songs of all time. USA did a survey. These are like legacy accolades, I call them. If you stay around long enough, things, No,
I was very proud of that. 91 in the all-time great record, all-time number one.
Yes, that's amazing.
And it was number one for 4 weeks at Billboard, which is almost unheard of, really.
In those heady days, especially with the competition, because the top 10 are million sellers, not just the one.
Exactly. It's
way different. And Tommy, just so you know, when you get out there, there's an audience out there, and they're waiting to love you, and you'll see they'll embrace you before your show starts because of what you brought to them.
Well, my fans are incredible. Through all of this past few years, they've been so incredible on my Facebook page. I have my friend Ron running my Facebook page for me, and they stay in touch and they want to know how everything's going. We have great fans. We
do, man.
They stick with us, which is incredible.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that our generation's fans,
I agree.
They're ride or die, man. We're all going to take each other all the way over. It's pretty cool.
It's because there was no MTV for our people. There was no VH1. They got their favorite artists and had to go and get in their car and go buy a ticket and do it. And they're still doing it today. And
that's right.
Not to stop until we stop.
Well, I always said when MTV came along, it killed the listener's imagination because everyone that heard Sheila visualized it differently. Visualized it in their terms, in their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's what made it so special, because I remember when I was into music in high school, when I'd hear a Buddy Holly song, I visualized it my way. I talked to my buddy, he visualized it a different way.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
That was lost when MTV came along. It really changed the whole thing of the listening to music,
It did. But we still get to go out and do long concert tours, and the people from the 80s and the 90s aren't, because they were video.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like Pro Tools showed us what songs look like because you start focusing on the graphs.
Oh, yeah, true.
MTV showed us what songs look like. Somebody's interpretation that many became quite popular, were quite good. That Wrapped Around My Finger by the Police video is in those candles still is in my head, But
it's a different sensory. It's a whole different event.
A whole different thing, yeah. But
it's not spontaneous. Like our era, all of our music was very spontaneous. We did it on the fly. Yeah, I remember when I cut everybody in Muscle Shoals. Muscle Shoals, Fame Studio was just getting started with Rick Hall. He didn't even have a 2-track. He just had a 1/4-inch tape, and you recorded right to the 1/4-inch tape. So he mixed it as we went. I'd do 15 or 20 takes. But it was all mixed. So when you left the studio, you had your master under your arm.
Right.
There was no mixing or choices to make. You did it on the fly in the studio.
For everybody, when you finished those 15 and you finally had it in one day, apparently, one session, man, because I know that song very well. Did you know you walk out of there? We just walked out of here with a hit.
Oh, yeah. We felt, we worked on it. Like we really worked on it to get it the way we wanted it. And that's when I first brought my guitar. Bobby West played the guitar on that, the boom, doom, 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 doom. He played all of that. So everything was gelling, you know, but, you know, we were in the studio 24 hours a day. It was like nonstop. But when you left, you had your record, you know.
Yeah, you did it till you're done. That's great.
Crazy.
Tom, thank you so much. We could talk and talk and talk, but we got to let you go. And thank you so much for sharing your history and your great story. It's as good as it gets.
It's good to be with you, Bob, Paul, Susan.
And Tommy, listen.
Keep going.
Yeah, keep going. And look, I want to let you know this was special for me because I was a huge Tommy Roe fan as a little girl.
Nice. So that's sweet. Well, I was a big Cowsills fan too. So
all right, buddy. We'll see you down there.
Okay, you take care.
Take care, Tommy.
Thank you, Tom.